Hey, I'm Matt Manny. Welcome to a brand new series of a devotional called You Are Not Alone. It's Promises from Psalms, a 30-day devotional. If you've ever experienced a difficulty in life and you've wondered in the back of your mind, does God have any help? Does God have any answers for my problem? Can I find some hope in God? And my thought for you today would be this: where can you turn to find some hope? The encouragement that we can find in the Bible is so varied for so many different scenarios and situations in life that the Bible is profitable and helpful for just about any scenario that we would face in life. And what's amazing is this: we don't have to look too far outside of the book of Psalms to find multiple life circumstances. You Are Not Alone is a devotional that we've put together that addresses different topics of things that we face when we feel really lonely at times in our lives. There are times when we face life that seems to be against us. We face seasons like that. We face seasons of uncertainty. We have family struggles we go through, and we wonder, God, is there any help for me? When we're in a stress-filled season, when panic and pressure and anxiety come on, when relationships struggle, and we struggle to know, can I offer forgiveness? Can I ask for forgiveness? How can I get a second chance? And can I get a second chance with God? There are times when we come to maybe even at the season of life, we're facing the end of our days. What help and hope do we have from God? My question for us today is this: what would you do? Where would you turn when it came to the heartbreak of losing a loved one? How would you handle a situation? What would you go to? Where would you turn to in the Bible, and specifically in the Psalms, to address an issue like the hurt and heartache of a child who's kind of walked away and you've lost a relationship with them? How do you handle exhaustion and fatigue? What about when you feel forgotten? What about when you're losing the comparison war, when you see other people winning and doing better? Where do you turn for that? What about if you've been falsely accused? That's a tough circumstance to be in. What hope do you have? What about when you don't know what to do for your next step? What about when you go through seasons where you feel like you can't hear God's voice? What do you do when you feel like people have abandoned you, and maybe even your family has abandoned you? What about when you feel overwhelmed, afraid? What about when, crazy enough, you've won and you thought people would respect you and love you, but they've turned their backs on you? And even though you're successful and doing things right and doing it well, it really has turned out that you'd rather go back to prior to the win, because life was better at that point, and now you feel alone. What about when you're in a season of waiting, where you feel like nothing's moving, or a season of obscurity, when you feel like nobody takes notice? All those thoughts and more we cover in this devotional, You Are Not Alone. I want to read for you from the introduction just some insight that really can help us kind of fix our thoughts and focus on what it means to find help and hope from God from the Psalms. In reflection on the Psalms, the author C.S. Lewis writes the following, quote, "The most valuable thing the Psalms do for me is to express the same delight in God which made David dance," end quote. David taps into the mighty power of the pen. He does 3,000 years ago what songs do for us today. They help us to express and put into word the depth of our thoughts and our emotions. The Psalms cover a multitude of issues and challenges we face in life. David speaks of interpersonal conflict, the wonder of nature, the heartbreak of losing a child, the guilt of sin, and the forgiveness of God. The topics range from our relationship to God, to others, and to ourselves. The Psalms bring beauty, order, and balance to the chaos of life. And we find that God draws us close in the midst of all this. Life comes into clarity, heaven is sweeter, and death has lost its sting, all found in the Psalms. For the one who feels so lonely, abandoned even, God is ever and always near. For the one whose heart breaks and feels hopeless, we find our hope in God's presence and promises. Life makes little sense, and heaven is a cruel promise for those who fall short in understanding the plans and purposes of God. What we experience this side of heaven sounds like a cacophony of noise and nonsense. It doesn't make sense. It's painful. But for those who get a glimpse of heaven, even the pain of this life only lingers for a moment to remind us of the glories to come. Lewis goes on to write then, the tuning up of an orchestra can itself be delightful, but only to those who can in some measure, however little, anticipate the symphony, end quote. For someone who's never been to a symphony, the tuning can be a turnoff. A short-sighted patron may stand and walk away in disgust and frustration before the performance even starts because they hear all the sounds and the noise. But for the well-traveled lover of song, the tuning of the symphony is the cue by the conductor that the brilliance and beauty of music is about to start. So too in life, the Psalms are our guide to tune our ears to the splendor of God's promise in suffering, the rapture of God's presence for the lonely, and the pleasure of God's peace for those pressed by stress. You may feel a sense of loneliness, but rest assured, the Psalms remind you and me that we are never alone. My encouragement for you, you can go ahead and check out this book. It'll be on Amazon. As well, you can go to MannyResources.com to see more about this. This book is releasing on May 20th, and so we will have more information about this on our website, as well as in the comments section of the description, and then we also will have on our social media channels as well for this. And my encouragement to you is you can find help and hope for any problem you face in the promises of God that we find in the Psalms. Thanks so much for watching.